Welcome, students. This is your Illustrious Narrator, welcoming you to a third season of Classroom Filmstrip Classics. This season, we will be adding movies that many of us watched in school, either on 16mm projector or on VHS tape. Today's episode will be discussing the 1964 film adaptation of the 1960 young adult novel Island of the Blue Dolphin. People from my generation saw a truncated version of this film on 16mm in school. This beautifully shot Technicolor film opens up with an introduction of the native people living on the remote island off the coast of Southern California during the early 1800s. The tribe has been living on the Pacific island for generations. The natives live off the ocean and in the past have contact with outsiders who like to parlay goods for sea otter pelts. One day, Karana, the film star, played by Celia Kaye, is the daughter of the chief, and her little brother Ramo spot a ship one day anchored off the island. It's a Russian brig filled with Aleut fur trappers and their Russian captain, played by George Kennedy, who parlays with the chief, Chubwig, played by Carlos Romero. He seems to distrust the Aleuts and Russians due to bad dealings in the past, but agrees to the sea captain's parlay of furs for beads, knives, and metal spearheads. But the deal turns pear-shaped when the Aleuts decide to cheat the natives and run off with the furs. This turns to violence, and most of the native warriors are killed when they're gunned down by the Russian sailors and Aleut fur trappers. Karana's father, the chief, is killed in the fight along with most of the warriors, leaving the rest of the tribe to worry about their future. One day, the Spanish missionaries catch word of the massacre when the tribe elder, Kimki, takes a longboat to contact the priest at a mission located off the coast. Weeks later, they arrive to relocate the tribe, but as they are escorting the people off the island, Karana realizes that her little brother Ramo is still on the island and leaps off the rescue boat to save her brother. Now both of them are stuck on the island, alone to fend for themselves. The two manage to survive for a while, but they're constantly under attack by the wild dogs that live on the island. One day, Ramo is killed by the pack, and Karana wages war on the wild dogs. After killing most of them and wounding their leader, she vows to make peace with the dogs and tames the wounded leader, whom she names Rontu. Karana lives for years on the island by herself and some animals that she tamed for companionship. One day, the Aleuts and the Russian sailors return to the island. Fearing for her life, Karana makes an emergency shelter in a cave. But one of the Aleuts, a domestic girl named Tutuk, accidentally discovers her while searching for water. The two become friends after several close encounters. Time passes and Rontu dies of old age. And months later, she finds a young pup who reminds her of Rontu. She captures him and tames the dog and names him Rontu Aru. Years later, a boat with people from the Spanish mission come by the island to search for any inhabitants. One of the priests, who was on the previous mission, lands on the island and searches for the missing Karana and Ramo. Karana, missing human interaction, greets the visitors and decides to go with them. She dresses in her cormorant feathers and takes her pet animals and a few belongings and leaves the island of the Blue Dolphins for good. Well, this is how the movie ends in a sort of a feel-good way. But it deviates from the book, where she is forced to wear more Western clothes before she can leave. The film Island of the Blue Dolphins was adopted from a young adult novel of the same name. Originally, the author, Scott O'Dell, wrote the book as a regular fiction novel, which was targeted for adults, which is why some parts of it are really violent for a young adult's home. A few scenes were condensed and changed for the film's adaptation. Despite the film having a cheery outlook and feeling like somewhat a Disney film, the book has a bleak and dark feel to it. Island of the Blue Dolphins had a sequel called Zia, which follows the tale of Karana and her hard times she had trying to adapt to life at the Santa Barbara mission, and her teenage niece, Zia, who has difficulty trying to communicate with her aunt due to a language barrier. We also learn why people from the Santa Barbara mission went to the Island of the Blue Dolphins in the first place. The film was directed by James B. Clark, who also made films such as Under Fire, Sierra Baron, Via, The Sad Horse, and A Dog of Flanders. The role of Karana was played by actress Celia Kaye, who was one of over 1,500 women who applied for the role. The producers did not know she was part native in real life, but were captivated by her appearance because she, quote, looked like an Indian with her dark hair and skin. In an interview years later, Celia Kaye felt that she was worried how she looked more like a Midwestern native than a West Coast tribal member while filming the movie, and was worried about people in the audience pointing that out. Despite the book becoming a huge success and it's still being read in school today, the movie was produced on a tight budget and made over $2 million at the box office. For years, the movie was hard to find and was shown from time to time on television or shown in schools in various truncated formats, until it was restored and released on Blu-ray a few years ago by Kino Lorber. The book and the movie were based upon the so-called lone woman of San Nicolas Island, Juana Maria. She lived by herself on a small channel island off the coast of Santa Barbara for almost 20 years. In the early 1850s, a trip was funded by Father Jose Gonzalez Rubio to look for the last members of the Nicoleno tribe. After several trips to the island, she was found by rescuers living in a crudely constructed hut made out of whalebone and was wearing a skirt made out of cormorant feathers. In 1853, a Sacramento newspaper described her as a wild woman who was found on the island of San Nicolas, about 70 miles from the coast, west of Santa Barbara, and is now at the latter place and is looked upon as a curiosity. It is stated she has been some 18 or 20 years alone on the island. She existed on shellfish and the fat of seals, and dressed in the skins and feathers of wild ducks, which she sewed together with sinews of the seals. She cannot speak any known language, is good-looking and about middle age. She seems to be contented in her new home among the good people of Santa Barbara. She was sent to the mission to live with her relatives, but none of the surviving members of her tribe could speak her native language. Juana Maria lived for several weeks at the mission before dying of dysentery